Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mimi Lee, and I am the Project Coordinator, Member Benefits Specialist of IBPA. Today's session is part of a series of webcasts for IBPA members and others that's been developed to help you better understand and take advantage of various IBPA membership benefits. Over the course of this year, IBPA will be featuring several of these benefits in free webcasts like this one in order to help you understand the different offerings in your membership benefits handbook. Today, we're focusing on IPR license, which as an IBPA member, you receive discounted rates on. Today's session is being recorded and a downloadable copy will be made available to everyone as soon as possible. Any questions you may have can be asked in the chat box to the right of your screen. I will be recording your questions throughout the presentation and our presenter will address them at the very end. Now I would like to introduce our speaker, Brittany Pullen. Brittany is the main contact for small independent publishers and self-published authors who would like to take control of their rights management with IPR license. Prior to joining IPR, she worked as a publishing assistant for an independent publishing house. Brittany also oversees the development of business partnerships with self-publishers, author platforms, and associations. And with that, I would like to welcome and hand it over to you, Brittany.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm just going to pull up my slides. Hopefully everyone can see them. Right. Hello. Okay, great. So as Mimi said, I'm Brittany, and I'm from IPR License. I work as an account manager here. For those of you who are maybe a little bit unfamiliar with us, we are essentially a rights trading marketplace where publishers and authors can put the rights they have to their work up on our system and use it to really monetize their work as best as they can. Right, so in this session, we'll be discussing what publishing rights are in general, what you're sitting on, what rights you can monetize, and how you can best make use of them. So what rights can a publisher buy? What will they be interested in? And as a publisher yourself, what can you take on to build up your own catalog and get started in the rights trading marketplace? Also, how can authors make money through licensing rights? If you're self-published or you've been traditionally published, there are plenty of ways that you can get started. Even just from your own computer, there's plenty of opportunities. We'll be going through those. Well, in particular, we'll be discussing permissions and translations. These are two really underused rights that people are kind of sitting on. So I'll be going into those in a bit more detail. And then, of course, we'll be going through the benefits you'll be receiving as an IBPA member. So I'll take you through sort of the membership opportunities you have in the services that are open and available to you. But to start, what we'll be focusing on for the moment is what publishing rights are in general. So in publishing, if you're looking to find a traditional publisher, before you can get to the point of seeing it in print with that publisher, you're going to need to sell or license the rights to publish your book. So some publishers will try to secure world rights to that author's work, which will enable them to sell the book in different languages around the world. Smaller publishers may take on the rights to the territory they're in with limited formats, leaving you free to license the remainder of your available rights to a different publisher. It really depends on what is best for you, what the publisher is looking for, and what you feel most comfortable with. So a question I get asked quite a lot is, how is this separate from intellectual property or copyright? It's a very common question and it's very easily confused. I actually had to look it up when I first started. And what the World Trade Organization defines them in the following ways, please don't fall asleep on me. Intellectual property is the rights given to a person over the creations of their minds. They usually give the creator an exclusive right over the use of his or her creation for a certain period of time. Copyright is defined as the rights of authors of literary and artistic works, such as books and other writings, musical compositions, paintings, sculpture, computer programs, and films. And those are protected by copyright for a minimum period of 50 years after the death of the author. So if you're still confused, I definitely was. Basically, the intellectual property is the right given to a person for non-physical property, essentially an idea, that is the product of original thought. And copyright is automatically in place upon the creation of the work. It is the exclusive rights of the author to that work, which will protect their right to ownership for a minimum period of 50 years after the death of that author. I hope that makes sense. So, how is that different to publishing rights? While authors will, except in rare circumstances, always own the copyright to their work, it's possible for them to license the rights for a publisher to publish their work in that agreed format, in an agreed territory and language for an agreed period of time. So publishers will often offer an advance against royalties in payment for those rights as well. So if you're still on board with me, we're going to go through now what rights a publisher can buy. And we're going to go through them in a little bit of a particular detail because some formats like print, it's pretty obvious. But other things like first serialization and then kind of straight reading and radio and TV, it does get a little bit complicated. So we're just going to go through these in detail now. So print is quite obvious. I hope everyone knows what that means. It's a license to print your work into different print formats like hard or soft cover. That's pretty common, especially, I mean, if you're a self-published author, if you're new to the independent publishing business, print is quite common, obviously. So you also have digital, so that includes things like ebooks or enhanced ebooks. So these include interesting features as well that some people may not have already thought of, anything like embedded media, any interactivity, narration, and more. All of these are rights that you can license to another publisher to use for this work. Right, so first serialization. So this is more common to high-profile biography and other nonfiction. This is usually as well sold to newspapers and magazines to generate press prior to the publication. And second serialization is similar to first serialization, except this happens later after the book has already been published to get a little bit more buzz to the book. So basically, what this means, if you see things like this in the Daily Mail, they've licensed the work. This often happens as well in newspapers as well. Anything that you can see, it is still, I mean, it's still a little bit outdated, but you do still see examples of this in modern media, and it's definitely an option for you. So on to the probably most exciting bit is film. Everyone wants to turn their book into a film, and it really is an exciting process. Film companies will often option the rights to a book so that they can make the film adaptation. Some of these options never turn into film deals, but you do get to keep the money, and you might be able to sell the option again to another film company once that option has expired. So if it works for you, you definitely can reach out to film companies. If film companies are already reaching out to you, this is definitely an option for you, but don't feel if your book has already been optioned, nothing's happening. You're not stuck in it forever. There is another option to move on to a different company once it expires. Right, so TV and dramatization, these cover as well companies who want to dramatize your work for a television or radio play. This is a little bit different. I'm just going to jump ahead to radio and TV straight reading. So this is different from a dramatization and can be sold separately from dramatization rights. This will be something where someone is reading your work on air rather than taking it and putting it in a play format or kind of putting it as a TV show, that sort of thing. They're going to literally be reading the book out to you. Digest rights aren't common anymore really, but they do cover publication of a condensed or abridged version of your book, essentially a summary. Book club rights. Book clubs such as the Book People and Scholastic Book Fairs receive high discounts from publishers for committing to a certain number of copies. And as a result, the terms agreed in your contract will be different to the terms for other book sales. Audio rights, these are another really common ones. I mean, you see things with Audible, you see kind of audiobooks emerging all over the place these days. Celebrities are jumping on the bandwagon. You can have your mother read it out to you if you like. There's so many different options available these days, and these are things that self-published authors can go ahead and do themselves already and have a format already ready for a publisher to have a sample of. It's also something that publishers are now coming more onto and taking rights for. They've been really handy and different if you're published a book in the UK and you're wanting to reach out to an audience in Australia, for example. It's a really great way to kind of get readers interested. It's a little bit more interactive. So you can sell abridged or unabridged rights to the work. So obviously an abridged audio right is the right to record a shortened version of the book for sale on tape, on CD, or through a digital download. Unabridged is the right to record full verbatim text of your book, the whole thing. It's more common these days to have the unabridged version, to have everything from start to finished. But if you're doing it yourself and you're a little bit short on cash, then an abridged version is a great way to get a sample of your work out there, get it kind of summarized and get everyone on board. And then if you want to have the unabridged rights taken on later, then you have a better opportunity to recover the full and record the full audio book for yourself. Large print, it's pretty self-explanatory, the large print rights to your work. And then finally, we have anthology and quotation, which is the right for the publisher to grant permission for another publication to quote from or include your work in an anthology. Right, so I know that's quite a lot to take on board, but it is quite a lot as well that everyone is sitting on. You can monetize these in so many different ways, which we're going to get into in just a moment. So, authors and publishers, like I said, are in a great position to license their rights. Authors in particular, contrary, I've met many, many self-published authors who don't believe that they're in a great position, but they really are, because you own worldwide rights to your work, which is fantastic. That's really attractive to publishers who are looking to take on worldwide rights. They don't have as many hoops to jump through. However, alternatively, if you have sold rights as well, if you've hung on to a few, then that's also attractive for publishers if you're reaching out perhaps to a territory that's not your own. It shows that you've had success before in different markets, that sort of thing. So how do you make money through licensing your rights? The most important way, especially obviously with foreign rights, is finding these new and emerging markets. Right sales are a really important aspect of a title's profitability. So by reaching out to these new markets and finding new readerships within these areas, you're expanding your reach, you're expanding your markets, which in turn expands your sales and makes you even more profitable to other foreign publishers who might be interested in taking on the rights to your work. So markets vary around the world. You know, books that are largely ignored in the US might be suddenly hugely popular in somewhere like China or Germany. The markets change from day to day, and that's part of our job as well, is to make sure everyone's keeping an eye on these markets and keeping an eye out for where certain titles might be more popular than others. And these new markets are emerging and changing all of the time. So if you've tried a different market, let's say you're published in the US and you're wanting to find a publisher in the UK or Germany, and you might have tried it a year ago, say, and you didn't have much success, try again. Definitely monitor where your book is selling well in the top 100 charts in that sort of genre. If certain languages are now kind of expanding more to romantic books or comedies or any scientific journals that might be kind of emerging in certain markets, keep an eye on it. It's really important, and it's definitely a way that will really jumpstart your right sales as well. So with that as well, translation rights and territory rights, which we're going to get into in further detail in a little bit. these can be sold separately to the countries that want them. So, for example, if you were doing really well in the United States with your English language market, you can sell German rights to a publisher in Germany and then keep the rest of your languages for yourself to sell on to different publishers and spread your net just that little bit wider. This is a huge opportunity to both increase your readership and then also to make money from potential advances and ongoing royalties in foreign territories. Subsidiary rights like film options and audio editions that I've also mentioned, it goes the same way. It can also be purchased by those that are interested in certain languages, certain territories, and then keeping a hold of those other ones to spread out to other publishers in different territories that might be interested in them. Right, so another way to monetize your work is through literary permissions. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this because the world of permissions is a very confusing and quite often a little bit unknown process. So bear with me for just a second. Right. So I'm not sure how many of you already know what literary permissions are. If you do, go ahead, plug your ears for the next 5 minutes. If not, pay attention. It is a little bit confusing, but it's a massively underused kind of process to keep monetizing your work and protect your own copyright as well. So what are literary permissions? As you can see, it is the permission from the rights holder of a work, and that can be the author, the publisher, or a literary agent, to take the abstract from one work and then use it in another without infringing copyright. This is sometimes referred to as well as a limited use license. You might have seen this before, especially in more academic circles, as there will be more restrictions on the number of times and context the quote can be used in. So if you're the rights holder, then people can contact you for permission to use extracts from your work, and you can monetize and monitor how many times they're using your work, in what way and how much they're using your work, all of this. But before we dive into that, who uses permissions? It's a very wide net. Permissions are frequently requested by people. I mean, it could be a journalist wanting a line for an article, or a film producer quoting a work in their movie. It could be a teacher using your writing in a classroom, or a fellow author who thought you said it just the right way. You could be a broadcaster on the radio wanting to read an excerpt on air. It could be an advertiser who thinks you perfectly expressed something that would sell their product that much better. It could as well be a blogger. This is more common in the last 10 years, bloggers wanting to use quotations or chunks of your work on their own post. So there's tons of opportunities out there, but often they're unused, and copyright is quite often infringed on. So how does this all work? To be honest, like I said, it's a confusing process, and it takes a while to kind of get the hang of what's important, what opportunities you have out there. So this is what I've gathered. There are many, many different types of permissions for literary works, and these include things like photocopies, so self-explanatory. There's permission to create a copy of the work. You also have electronic course materials. An online teaching course is an option for that. Print course materials, so that would obviously be a textbook or something along the lines of that. You have other digital publications as well, so this could be something like an online news article. You have other print publications, so a novel, or anything, so content shared electronically, which would count as something like a blog post. Right. So how does this all work? For each type of permission, different prices can be set for different lengths of the work. So this would include a quote. So you'd be able to specify a word count range with a minimum and a maximum. So for example, you'd be able to set the cost or the amount between 100 to 500 words, let's say. You also have the option to reproduce a page. So it would be the price of reproducing an entire page, for example, in a photocopy. You have things like chapters, so the price of reproducing an entire chapter, which would, for example, often appear more in an academic textbook or an anthology. But you also, I'm not sure how many of you out there work directly with figures in the work, but you can also set a price for reproducing that image, so in an anatomical diagram, for example. After that, it's important as well to know when they're needed. And the safest answer is always. No one wants to infringe on copyright. It's illegal and also a bit unkind. So there are a few common exceptions, however. The most common exception is the use of a short quote in a non-commercial academic essay. However, these must be cited and fully acknowledged, and this kind of use is known as fair use, but you have to bear in mind as well that this is a legal term, not a subjective one, so it is still always on the best side to check. Other exceptions count as non-commercial research and private study, criticism, review, and reporting current events, teaching in educational establishments, and there are also exceptions for the disabled as well. I hope that all makes some kind of sense. It is a bit of a confusing process, but as I said, permissions are massively underused. There are so many opportunities for you out there to protect your work, especially in this digital age. It's so easy these days to copy a sentence or a chapter of someone's work and not really think anything of it and include it in a post or in whatever it may be. And there's not a lot of ways that you can monitor it, so it's always best to kind of set yourself up, have an idea of the permissions that you would like to sell on to others. If you're a publisher, to monitor and protect your authors. If you're an author, to protect yourself, keep yourself kind of as profitable as possible, protecting your own work. It's all just so important, and again, like I said, it's often a confusing world, which is why there's plenty of organizations out there for you as well. So if you have any questions, I mean, you can always contact someone at IPR, their CCC, really anything like that. There's so many different avenues for you. Right, so moving on from the somewhat dull world of permissions, are translations. So these as well are an excellent way for authors to monetize their work, but as with permissions, it is staggeringly underused. So while recent studies show a growth of literary translations over the past 2 decades, in the UK, only about 3% of all books published in the United Kingdom are works in translation. I'm not sure how many kind of the percentage it is for the States, but I do know that it is massively still quite underused. This is really, really low compared to other European countries like Germany, France, or Italy, and it is a really, really good way to kind of improve your readership in different markets, like I keep coming back to, building up that readership and getting other languages excited about what other countries are doing. You know, I mean, like I said, it builds up and builds that market just that much further. So, how do translations work? Let's see. So, basically, authors can sell the rights for a publisher to translate their work into another language and sell that foreign language edition of the book in the territories where that language is spoken. It's convoluted, but it does work. So some authors, for example, opt to translate the book themselves. This can be very, very expensive, which I'll get into in a minute, but with a traditional publishing contract, most publishers will take on the translation themselves. This is as well important if you're new to negotiating contracts in rights licensing. It's a very important thing to have in that contract that that whole translation is going to be handled and it's going to be taken care of. The British Centre for Literary Translations also has an excellent guide on how translation works within these traditional publishing companies. So before, if you're an independent publisher yourself and you're new to that whole scene, if you're an author and you're wanting just a little bit more information on how to kind of use these translations and get yourself kind of protected in that sense, it's always a great idea to kind of educate yourself before moving forward with anything that either might damage the quality of your work or will cost you lots of money for no really good reason. So like I said, some authors do opt to translate the book themselves, but this cost varies greatly depending on the language and the experience of the translator. As an example, I took a little bit of a look around, and if you're translating from 5,000 words only, if you were to translate it from English to Spanish, French, or German, on average, the cost for just 5,000 words translation is about $850 US. It's really very expensive. So if you can imagine doing that for your entire book, that's absolutely crazy. It's just not necessary. So what we usually recommend here at IPR is if you're set on finding a publisher in a different territory with a different language, but you're unsure that they're really grasping the quality of your work because it's not in their own language and you'd like to present it to them in, for example, coming back to Germany, if you're trying to find a publisher in Germany and you wanted to translate it into the German language, what some authors do tend to do if they're set on getting it translated is to just translate depending on how much cost you want to put into it. Is to just translate either the first page, the first chapter, something like that, that will give the publisher who may be interested in your work an idea of how your work flows, the idea of kind of the feel of your work, all that sort of thing. That can be conveyed in a chapter, really. You don't have to go full out and translate your entire work all in one go. So that is recommended, but in most instances, most global markets are experienced in handling kind of foreign language rights, getting it all translated themselves. So it's not something you have to worry about greatly, but it is something that you have to be aware of that you're sitting on. So if you've always had the dream of finding a publisher in China, for example, that's not an impossible dream to have. It's definitely something that's doable, and with the kind of right approach and getting your book out there in the right way, it's something that is definitely something that can monetize your rights quite quickly. Right, so moving on to your benefits. So as I said, all of that is something that IPR License is really interested in, and it's basically the backbone of what we've been doing. So for those of you, again, who aren't sure who I am or what I'm talking about at all, I'm from IPR License. We were founded by Tom Chalmers in 2012. Tom has lots of experience in the publishing industry. He has quite a few different publishing companies at this point. You may have heard of Legend Press, which just turned 10 last year. And what we do is, as it says on the side, we are a rights trading platform, and this helps you to make your work available to attract publishing interest. We work with both publishers and authors in a variety of different ways, but the idea is to help our members monetize their rights and get a really solid presence in the global market. So as well as Mimi mentioned, IBPA members also receive a 25% off on the IPR license membership. So this is something that's available to you, and we're already working with a few of you, and I mean, I'll just get into now, I guess, the services that are available to you, and if it's of interest or if you have any questions along the way, I can see a few of them kind of popping up, and I'll get to them at the end. Right. So if you're an author, for those of you who are authors listening in, there's quite a few different ways that we do help you. I work as an author account manager here at IPR as well as with independent publishers. So through this membership, you and I would work really closely together on the kind of following ways. So through the membership, the goal, obviously, as I've been saying, is to help you monetize your work. So make money from licensing your work in different formats and territories, as we've discussed, whether it's through licensing your translation rights, whether it's through helping out with permissions, whether it's finding you a presence in a market that you think would be perfect for your book, that sort of thing, that is available to you. Through that as well, you're featured on global rights campaigns to over 50,000 publishing professionals in over 90 countries. So these are online e-newsletters and bulletins which are distributed to that mailing list, and then also to our publisher and buyer members as well. Another option for you is you can upload your manuscript for a third-party evidence of copyright registration. This kind of stumped me when I first joined. Essentially, in straight terms, what this generally means, it's not mandatory, but if an author on the platform chooses to upload their manuscript, we store it privately on our system. The author is then issued a reference number, a unique one, and if copyright of that work is ever called into question, so if someone comes along a year from now and says they actually wrote your book at this time, at this day, we'll be able to pull up that record and show that it was actually you who wrote your own work and show the record that you have on there. Right. So after that, yeah, we can produce a record using that number and show that you're the rights holder, and hopefully that will end the dispute right there. You can also receive basically a preliminary rights report, which is essentially a critique of your records. So you and I would have a one-on-one consultation, discuss your record in general, however it is represented, make sure everything's in order and that your rights are listed correctly, your categories and all of this kind of digital stuff that may kind of go in one ear and out the other. We'll be having sorted to make sure it's all working for you correctly. And if there's any important information you're missing, and as well how to best target your record towards these publishers and territories you're interested in, that's all covered. You can also feature in the IPR Rights magazine, which is distributed at 5 major world book fairs. So this actually is a little bit outdated. We are also doing a monthly magazine now, but last year this was distributed at 5 major book fairs in New Delhi, in London, of course, at Book Expo, America, in Beijing, and Frankfurt. And then finally, you can also sell your limited use licenses or permissions through fully transactional permission services. If you're all still awake, I'm going to just quickly move on to the benefits you would gain as a publisher. So for you publishers who are listening, we work with quite a few different variations of publishers. We work with publishers who have one title, they've just started, they're thinking about kind of building up that titles repertoire before moving on to finding new titles to work with. So in these cases, then we find their target market like we've been discussing and really get that pushed out to the wider publishing world. We also work with bigger publishers like Elsevier who have thousands of titles on the system. In that case, so for those of you who maybe already have a rights department or who for rights licensing isn't exactly the newest thing in the book, we kind of supplement your sales teams and really move forward with them to help you monetize the rights as best as possible. So with this, I won't bore you too much, but you do have that account management and transaction support. So if your rights are all up on the system with your book record, and a publisher or buyer wants to make an offer, they go ahead and click on that title and make an offer, and we're there to help you negotiate for that contract. That same goes for authors, but we are there for that negotiation support. You also would receive a branded publisher rights shop. So this is essentially a company profile page. So this would include a full company bio, logo, contact details, and then a full kind of catalog list of the rights you have available. Some companies just choose to put their backlist up, some some have their front list, some have both, all that sort of thing. So that is definitely available to you as well. Let's see, you also receive on and off-site merchandising. It's a bit of a wishy-washy term, which just generally means that you do get this on-site merchandising, such as search page promotion. You also have the opportunity to have banners up, inclusion in our global bulletins, so those bulletins that are sent out to that kind of bigger mailing list of publishing professionals in those different territories, and then also in the IPR Rights magazine, which I just discussed on the author side. So that is also available to you, and we're happy to work with publishers and authors on working within their merchandising plans to make sure that those markets that you're targeting on your own, we're also kind of doing a united push for you on our end and getting them out to the relevant people at the right time. Following that, we also have a rights education package from our partners, Copyright Clearance Center and Frankfurt Book Fair. So these include exclusive reports, white papers, webinars, and general support for just growing your licensing business, whether that's through consultations, if it's through kind of just general one-on-one chats, any advice you need, that's what we're all here for. We also have a new matchmaking service. This is what I am actually most excited about for both authors and publishers. Essentially, the service is run between members as well as with interested buyers from around the world. And it includes both an introduction service to those publishers who may be interested in you, and then also to, let me see, monthly webinar session. So once that introduction has already been established, then you would go on to really keep in touch with that publisher and see where matches might be made if they have titles that you think would be really working well for you in 6 months, to start chatting about that. If they have something that you think would work really well for you in a certain format, there you go, that sort of thing. So we have monthly webinar sessions with that will be starting, and I'm happy for publishers to take part in that as well. We also have title alerts. This is just basically exactly what it sounds like. Members receive monthly bulletins with new matches for their requested categories, languages, and territories. These bulletins will be targeted per publisher request. And if you have any changes, if you're focusing on a different genre, so let's say you're publishing nonfiction and poetry and your main focus had been poetry for the first year, but it's really been going along well, so you want to come back to nonfiction, that can be changed at any time. So you can start receiving notices for your nonfiction titles, and that will be changed immediately. And just general support, as I said. So through IPR's partnership with Frankfurt Book Fair, and CCC, we can also provide support and promotion at book fairs through the year and generally across the world through our various offices. So this is all basically here for you. We're really happy and really thrilled to be working with publishers and authors from the IBPA, and it is definitely a massively, like I said, the rights are massively underused, and we'd be really thrilled to keep working with you as we have been doing and really help you kind of learn about the rights you have and how you can monetize them correctly. So I'm just going to, before we go to questions as a whole, I'm just going to go through some frequently asked questions that I get asked. Let's see, what's the first one? Right, so I'm self-published. Is there any point in me joining the platform and taking advantage of kind of what we've been doing through the IBPA? The answer is yes. Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. As an individual, you may have found you've had local success. So if you're doing really well in your current market, it's easy to kind of sit back and say, well, I've done it now, you know, it's working, I've got this kind of great thing going, I don't need to do anything really more for the moment. But that's not true. By exposing yourself to this kind of global market, either by including it on the IPR platform or by just generally opening yourself up to these opportunities in general, And given the changing attitude of trade publishing to the self-publishing process, you could secure a traditional publishing deal locally, but you can also expand your readership in such a big way, as I keep saying, through reaching out to these different territories and not being afraid to approach publishers with different languages, that sort of thing. It's a really massive, massive, massive way to kind of get your sales going and get them out there, and then also kind of make a bigger name for yourself in the publishing industry. So next question, I've signed a deal with a self-publishing company. Can I still join? Yes, generally. In our experience, most self-publishing services like CreateSpace or Smashwords offer a non-exclusive deal, which means you're free to look at other options. If you did get an offer from a publisher, they may still ask you to end your contract with these services, but that's something for you to consider when it happens. You'll need to read the documentation and terms and conditions, which you should be doing all the time anyway, of whichever service you signed up to, and check that the terms specified are non-exclusive, but we're always happy to help you check. And then lastly, and this is actually the most common, how tech savvy do I have to be? Really not very. I'm horrible at technology. Even this whole WebEx experience, I had to kind of take my notes. The platform is a breeze. It's really easy to use. The most you really have to do is fill in forms, that sort of thing, and then through the magic of technology, you're all up and running. So if you're really frightened of kind of reaching out to publishers through this global market, you also have all of us lovely people on hand to help you kind of get started, walk you through the process. We're happy to give you a call and literally walk you through step by step if needs be. So yeah, like I said, it's not so difficult, but if you're a little bit put off by the idea of kind of using a platform, don't be. We're very friendly. We don't bite. We're really happy to help. So that's really it. General questions now. I can see that you, oh, actually, yes, how do I join? If you are interested in taking part with us and taking advantage of this opportunity through the IBPA, what I would recommend you do is get in touch with me directly. So I believe my contact details are here, yes. So all of my colleagues are around to help. If you have any questions following this webinar, if you just want a little bit more advice on what rights you're holding on to, or what kind of membership would be best for you if you're both an author and a publisher and you're unsure which way to go, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to have a chat. I usually have a bit of a coffee as well and go over things with you. So that's definitely an option. Don't hesitate. There's literally no stupid questions because I'm pretty sure I've asked all of them myself. So that's there for you. I can see there's been a few questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Brittany. I wanted to just step in for a second to say that, you know, what you presented today is really informative, and I've, you know, as a member benefits specialist, I've learned a lot myself, and I'm sure our members did as well. You know, IBPA is very honored to have you in IPR license as a partner, and I did want to remind IBPA members to, you know, because you are a part of our membership and association, to take advantage of, you know, the things that IPR license has to offer. And with that being said, I would love to, you know, get into the Q&A. There is actually quite a bit, and I'm going to scroll up because I want to start off with the basic. You know, it's important because I actually didn't, it didn't occur to me to ask this as well, but what does IPR stand for? It's an acronym, but could you tell us what it stands for?
Intellectual property rights is generally what IPR stands for. So it would be an intellectual property rights license.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
No worries.
So Lucy wants to know, can you give us an idea of how much to ask for for permissions. I think it was licensing permissions. I may be wrong.
Yeah.
It was one of the first few slides.
Sure. Unfortunately, I'm not actually legally able to say. I can't. Typically, it really varies depending on the country, depending on the person who's requesting it. Because if it's a small kind of university wanting to copy a few chapters of whatever book for their own use for class kind of thing, that cost would vary greatly let's say, oh gosh, I don't know, if someone was wanting to reproduce it in an advertising campaign kind of thing. But what I do have is some information which I'm happy to send to everyone who does have questions about it, where you can kind of read through, like I said, what are they called? The British Library for whatever it is, they do have lots of good information where you can kind of check your own work and see what kind of prices would be relevant. Once you've kind of come up with the prices, then we're happy to have our authors and publishers come back to check with us and see if that's really crazy or if it's not enough sort of thing. We're happy to advise based on that, but unfortunately there's no kind of standard, if that makes any sense.
Yes, thank you so much. So moving on to the next one, Mary wants to know, are there industry guidelines for how to price permissions, licenses, etc.?
Yeah, so that would be the same kind of thing. There are general guidelines, but unfortunately there's no really good answer. It does kind of depend, again, on where it's coming from sort of thing. But there's tons of literature that you can read. I don't have to hand at the second, but that really kind of explains it in depth, and you can kind of check your own work and then go from there.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, most of the questions are geared towards the price range. So if, definitely feel free to follow up with Brittany after this live presentation. And, I think, you'll send the materials and yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
no problem.
thank you. Bob wants to know, our books have been displayed at Frankfurt Book Fair, Bologna Book Fair, London Book Fair, etc. From these fairs, we've received many promising leads from interesting publishers. We followed up with them, however, nothing ever happened. How is IPR different? Would we have better chances of signing with foreign publishers through IPR?
I mean, yeah, it really, there are no guarantees in the publishing world, and unfortunately, depending on which fairs you were at, sometimes people are just really slow moving. So it's not to say that from that nothing will ever happen from that. Where IPR is different is that we're trying to create a marketplace where people come to specifically to buy rights. So when you go to a book fair, you get kind of a lot going on there, people having meetings, doing just different things. They may not be geared towards buying rights per se, or things get lost in the shuffle. The idea with IPR is that people are coming specifically looking for a genre of book, or maybe a specific author if they've heard of you and they're wanting to kind of check out your work a little bit more. So the idea is that this is where people come with the intention of buying rights kind of quickly. So it streamlines the whole process. So that's where we are quite different to just kind of having your books represented at book fairs. As well, our team, once an offer, for example, has been made, so if someone expressed interest in your work and you wanted a little bit of follow-up on it, that's where we come in to really help you out, chase down the publisher that was interested. If they have made an offer and they're dragging their feet through the contract negotiation, that's where we also step in to negotiate on your behalf or advise you on it depending on what you'd prefer, and really keep the ball moving so that there's no kind of stagnant process throughout it. And then once the deal is completed, then the whole transaction is fed through through the platform, which again then we chase up if anyone's late paying royalty payments or anything like that.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was a great answer. Wow, we are continuing to get a flow of questions. So Linnell wants to know, it sounds like IPR does a great job making titles available to foreign publishers. Does IPR help consumer discoverability in foreign territories?
Yes, generally through the basis of finding publishers. So I'm assuming that you're kind of asking about readers gaining readership. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, definitely, like I said, by kind of finding these foreign publishers and getting them interested in your work, then that's where the extended readership comes in, and then the consumers come. We aren't a distribution agency, so we don't actually sell the book through the platform ourselves, but by kind of reaching out to these publishers and getting the books out there in those markets, then obviously that feeds back into the consumers and all that stuff.
Sounds good. Can English language rights in foreign territories be sold separately from translated rights?
English language, yes. Yes, they can, is the short answer. Then it, again, depends on the contract, etc., but the short answer is yes.
Excellent. Let's see. Do you have data on the open rate of your global rights campaign's email blasts?
Ooh, that is a good question. We don't generally make that public per se, but we do have statistics on who's been looking at the website, where those territories are, where licensing deals have gone through, what genres have been popular, that sort of thing, which does feed in and tie back into those global bulletins, because in those areas where the kind of response is greater, then that will feed back into where we've been targeting our campaigns and will continue to do so.
Sounds good. So I'm assuming, the same applies for the data on number of new rights transactions made per year. Okay.
Exactly.
Let's see. This might be, I'm not sure if you're able to answer this question, but is there a license problem with Ingram Spark?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I can't answer that question, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if they want to, that's something I could look into, I suppose, if they want to. I'm not sure who asked, but definitely get in touch with me, and I do my best to answer you once I have a look.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Let's see. Let's see. Zach wants to know, are there more personalized sales staff and initiatives? Your website says there's 14 million records in your system, so it seems like it would be pretty easy to get lost.
Yes. So we have actually now, we're in the process of narrowing down those titles. When we first started, before we had any members on the system, we still wanted to present a catalog for people to kind of have an idea of how the site would look. And they didn't have any particular kind of rights holders attached, but now that we have our members on there and everyone's working out and kind of licensing deals on their own behalf, the titles have now been narrowed down significantly, or they're in the process of. I'm not actually sure what status that is at, but generally the idea behind IPR as well is we're not an agency, so we can't represent you directly ahead of any other members, but how we do try and help you stand out from the crowd, I guess, is through a variety of different technological options that I don't really pretend to understand, because I barely understand how to turn my computer on, but I do know how they help. So generally, we have things like categories. So you pick your category, your generally specific category that publishers would be going in to look at for specifically, and your book would then pop up in our advanced search function. There are also things like keywords that are picked up on. So for example, if you have a variety of different categories that you believe your book fits into, and you really want to make sure that if a publisher is looking for your book in that specific category, it's important to have it in there, and then it will pop up as well when they're doing their search. The same goes for you're just even making your record presentable. You'd be surprised at actually, I've used this example so many times, but I think it's probably the best. It's a bit like eBay. You wouldn't be going and selling a watch on eBay and then not really putting up a picture and just kind of leaving it there, you know? So you kind of have to be proactive in making it look attractive yourself, but then also working with the technology that you're given to make sure it's popping up and all that stuff. That sounds really intimidating, but that's also what we're here for. We know what works and how to make you pop up and stand out. And when your book is getting put up onto the platform, that is our #1 priority, is to make sure it's being represented correctly.
Thank you, Brittany. I think this is the last question. Does
Sure.
IPR have a market channel for fiction books dealing with race and culture?
Oh, sorry, say again?
Oh, does IPR have a market channel for fiction books dealing with race and culture?
Yes, we do. So that would again fall into kind of the categories themselves, and then from there, depending on which market is kind of pushing for them at the minute, then we would kind of be funneling them through in that way, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, well, I think that's it with all the questions. And, you
Right.
know, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email Brittany directly. Her email is displayed on the current slide. Brittany, again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this webinar with IBPA. You know, we really appreciate it. And I would like to thank the audience for taking the time out of their busy schedule to learn more about, you know, what IPR has to offer. It, you know, takes a lot of initiative, and we really appreciate, you know, your attendance today. Again, if you have any questions, you know, are more than welcome to email Brittany and myself. I did want to mention that the webinar is currently being recorded, and a recording of it will be made available in the next, you know, I would say 24 to 48 hours. Definitely check your inbox in the next few days. You should receive one from me. Enclosed in the email will be the downloadable link to the webinar, as well as Brittany's PowerPoint deck. And lastly, I'll include the membership handbook, where you can look up, you know, IPR license and learn more about their, you know, discounted rates. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great day. Would you like to add anything, Brittany?
No, just thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for listening. And like you said, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to get in touch. I'm really happy to chat anytime.
Great. Well, thank you, Brittany, and we'll be in touch very soon. And everyone else, have a great Wednesday. Bye-bye.